Hey guys, Jordan here from VFX Vault again, and in today's tutorial we're going to be going over how we can create this really nice kind of galaxy themed skybox. So you can see as we look up, there's stars, there's this nice kind of purple pink gradient kind of moving across it, and there's all the little stars in the background. This would be perfect for say like a galaxy event for UEFN, so let's get into it. So if you're just looking to download the assets, I've added these assets for free on vfxvault.com. I'll leave a link down below. There's also a premium version of these assets that I'll be selling on vfxvault.com. So if you want to support the channel, please head along and check that out. Thank you so much, and now on to the tutorial. So coming back into the project here, we're going to just go over exactly what we're going to build. In this tutorial, we're going to have a nice kind of galaxy themed skybox with some stars, a little bit of color going over it. And we're also going to go over how we can remove the pinching when we use certain things like a sphere for our skybox. And we'll do a nice horizon color, and we'll do some different color gradients. So first things first, I've included some files. They'll be available to download on VFX Vault for free, and I'll include a link down below in the description. But we should have a sort of sphere here and a couple textures, and we'll just go over them now. So we've got our sphere. So this is just a regular sphere kind of mesh, but we've inverted the normals so you can see, we can sort of see through one side, but once we're inside we can't see out. It's because the normals are facing in, because we want a big sphere or like a sky dome for our level, and we'll put that in our level and we'll just scale it up a whole bunch. The scale doesn't matter for now, but we'll go over scaling it up. You can scale it up or down as much as you want, and then we'll make a new material here, and we'll call this m_skybox galaxy. So let's open it up, and let's take our stars, and we're just going to plug our star texture so we can look at it here. So we've just got a couple of little stars kind of scattered around. Take our star texture, we'll save it, and we will apply it, this new texture, drag and drop onto our sphere, and you can see it's kind of really huge and really kind of pixelated. So what we want to do now is let's scale it and tile it a few times. So we go tile, texture coordinate, and then we go multiply. We hold M and click, multiply, and S and click, and we call this texture, we'll call it star texture scale. Plug it in, and we'll set it to say like 5, and we save that. And now I see the stars getting a bit smaller. Let's go like 15. That's better. So we've got all these nice little stars, but you might see here we've got an issue. So you look in the level around the sides, it's nice. We've got the star texture. It's kind of repeating a little bit, but that's okay. But then we look at the top, and you can see because of the way we've UV'd our sphere, it's pinching really horribly. So there are a few things we can do to fix this, but I'll show you guys one really nice trick. So what we can do is we can use a little bit of math to remap our texture so we can map it onto our sphere, because the way we've UV'd our sphere, so if we open up our sphere's mesh, the way we have set the UVs is in a normalized kind of fashion where it's kind of fitted and laid out in a square from the top to the bottom of the sphere. There are other ways you can obviously UV the mesh, but we won't go over that in this tutorial. For this tutorial, we'll just go over how we can sort of apply these textures onto a sphere like that. So we can use a little bit of math. So I'll open up our material again, and instead of having the texture coordinate, what we can do is we can take the texture coordinate and we'll put in 2 multiply nodes, or hold M and click. So we have multiply, and the first one we'll go multiply 1 minus, and in the second one we'll just go multiply by, hold 1 and click, and we'll go multiply by 0.5, and then we can go multiply again, and we want to get pi because we're doing a little bit of math. So pi, obviously 3.141592, but we want 2 pi. So we plug a 2 into the multiplier here, and we've got 2 times pi. And then we just need to run it through a cosine and a sine. And then we multiply our cosine by the one that's -1. Sorry, by the one that's 0.5. And we also multiply the sine by the one that is 0.5. So we should have, we can unplug this because it's just a bit confusing. So it should look like this so far. So we've got our pi multiplied by -1 multiplied by 5, and then our sine and our cosine, and then we can append these vectors together. So like such. And sorry, I think what we actually need to do, just coming back to it, I think we've done it a little bit wrong, so we need a component mask. So we need the red channel of our, that's better, the red channel of our texture coordinate and the green channel of our texture coordinate to be separated as we multiply them differently. And then we append them back together here. And then we add 0.5. And now if we plug that into our multiply, it's giving us an error. So there's a error with the float conversion. It's because we didn't set the channel here to green. Cool. So what we've done here is, if you know a little bit of math, we can convert a texture from Cartesian to polar, or polar back to Cartesian. So if we take a Cartesian texture and convert it to polar, it's so that we can map it onto like a globe. So we have like a polar coordinate system for our texture. So we could put it on a big sphere like you would look, a coordinate system as you would look at a big globe. Imagine a globe with a map on it. We're just mapping our texture exactly like that. So once it saves here, we can save that. And now if we come back into the level, it still is stretched a bit. So we will double check what we might have done wrong. So I think the reason it is stretched is the last thing we need to do is we need to come into our cosine and our sine, and instead of a period of 1, we need a period of 2 times pi. So what we can do is we can go 3.1415992 here, and then we go times, so the little times symbol, times 2. So we have a period of 6.283184, and we just copy that, we plug that into our sine here, and now if we save, so both our cosines period and our sines period should be 6.283184, or 2 times pi. And now you can see inside of our level there's no more pinching on the sky dome. So got the sky dome, the textures are laid out really nicely as it approaches the pole at the top, and then down the sides they're pretty nice. But then one last issue is if we go this, it's probably usually fine as it is, but you might also want to have a sky dome where you can see the bottom of the sky dome. So if we come under the map, you'll see there's still pinching at the bottom. So we fixed the pinching at the top, but we still have pinching at the bottom. So what we can do is we just need to copy all of this, and then one thing we need to do is we just need to put, after the green channel here, we go 1 minus, and we put the 1 minus in here, and then we copy our textures here, we plug that in here, and then if we plug this copied one in, you can see now on the bottom it's not pinching anymore as the pole, but now we get pinching on the top. So we've fixed the pinching on the top. So this is the one with the fixed pinching on the top, this is the one with the fixed pinching on the bottom. We just need to merge them together or blend them together so we can use a loop node. So loop, we can blend from the top one to the bottom one. So what we're going to do is we get a linear gradient, and in the V gradient, remember the gradient goes from the top of our sphere to the bottom. We go add -0.5, and then we can preview this. So you can see it's halfway at the sort of equator of our sphere. And then we'll go multiply, and then we'll put in, and we'll call this multiply, we'll call this blend, and we will go well, I don't think we need to offset it. I think we can just leave it like that. Yes, so 0 at the top and 1 at the bottom, and then I think if we multiply by we need to offset, yes. I think that should be okay. So we just add the -0.5, and then we can plug in the RGB like such, plug in the texture from the bottom and the texture from the top, and then we plug that into our base color, and we save that. And now you see at the top there's no pinching, at the bottom there is no pinching. You can see a little bit on the sides where the stars are blending, but it should be okay. We can change our, where it's sort of blending from the top to the bottom, we can change our blend value. So we can make it really, really harsh or soften it a bit. And then I think what we need to do is also, we can call this one, put in another scalar, blend offset. So I'll just full screen this so you can see what I'm doing. We have the blend offset, so we can offset the position of where it's blending. And then also we want to go saturate, because we don't want values outside of 0 to 1. Because remember, in a loop where our gradient, so we'll go -0.5 here, where our gradient is 0, it's going to be showing this top texture. Where our gradient is 1, it's going to be showing this bottom texture. So we're just blending between the top texture and the bottom texture on our sphere. So we save that, and now you can see if we make the blend, so as I turn the blend up, we can make it really, really hard, and then you can see as I'm moving it, it's kind of changing the position of that blend. So we leave the blend at something like 25, it's probably fine, and we'll just leave it at like 4.5, so it's kind of roughly at the middle. It's not super, super big deal. Cool, so now we have our stars on the top and our stars on the bottom, gotten rid of that nasty pinching on our sphere. We can make our sphere as big as we want, so we can make it say 500 or 5,000. But you see the kind of clouds are behind it, or sort of in front of it, sorry. That could be what you want, that might not be what you want, it's really up to you. What we can do is we can just go into all, and we can go to, I think it was time of day, or a Skybox manager, I think. Can't remember what it's called, I think it was time of day device. That one, sorry, day sequence device. So we can drag that in, and we can just come in on the side here and just change anything that we need. So we can turn the sunlight off, and now it's nighttime, really dark for our stars. We can come down and turn where the clouds. So clouds. So yeah, we can click, if we enable the cloud override, then we can just turn off these clouds, which is fine for now. And then obviously there's also a bit of fog, so that's what's turning the sky blue when we turn on the kind of game mode. close this. So the fog, I think is here. So if we turn off this fog component, it gets rid of that kind of blue hue that's being added to Skybox. Cool. So we can copy this as much as we need it, but what we can do is we can just use a name. We could collapse it into a function, but we're not going to go over that in this tutorial. But if you want to use it in other materials, of course, you can collapse it into a function. But what we can do is we can just go named, reroute node declaration, and we'll call this polar to Cartesian. Oh, sorry, it's Cartesian to polar, I think it is. Cartesian to polar UVs. Or I think it is polar to Cartesian. My mistake. So we'll go back and we'll go polar to Cartesian. Polar to Cartesian UVs, and then we can just go polar to Cartesian UVs, and this is what a named a reroute node does. So we can use this to help keep our graphs really tidy, and also if we want to use this output in other places we can, which is what we're going to do, and then we can just kind of tidy this up and put it over here, and then we can do the same here, but we'll call this one polar to Cartesian UVs flipped, and we'll go polar to Cartesian UVs flipped, and we'll just plug it in here. And the last thing we'll do as well is we'll go and we'll call this, add another named reroute node, and we'll call this one gradient blend. Plug that in there, gradient blend, and plug that into our loop. Cool. So, and we'll just move this over here, and we'll call this one UVs, and this one, put a C to put a comment around it, call this one blends. Okay, so what we're going to go over next is how to set up smaller stars, and then how to set up some kind of color noise on it so that it looks really nice and kind of galaxy. So now that we've got the UV set up and the blend set up, I'm just going to slowly go over them. So you can see here we've got our polar to Cartesian for the top half. Then we've got the same thing but flipped. The only difference is this little one minus, and then we've got the blends and the blend offset. And then we've got our two textures here for the top and the bottom. What we can do is we can now give them a color. So we go convert to parameter, hold 3 and click, and then convert to parameter, and we'll call this stars underscore color, and we can multiply it by the base color, and we'll plug this into our base color and into our emissive color, and then we hold S and click twice, and we'll call this top one metallic and this bottom one roughness, and we want a metallic obviously of 0 and a roughness of 1, so our object is completely matte, so it's not like reflective or anything of any kind. And then in the color we can choose the color that we might want the stars to be. So you can see in the background here, as I'm moving the color wheel, we can have sort of yellow stars or blue stars, maybe purple. Let's have this dark purple stars. Now for the smaller stars, it's the exact same process, and because we've got all of this set up, we can do it really easy. So we just copy all of this, hold 3 and click, so we can put in another color, and we'll just rename this parameter here. We'll call this small stars texture scale, and this one here, call it the same small star texture scale, and we'll just replace these textures with our T underscore small stars, and we'll plug that in there. and then we'll multiply the output here and by a color, and we'll go convert to parameter, and we'll call this one small stars color, and we can make this maybe yellow, sort of golden, and we'll just add here after this multiply, and then plug that into the emissive and the base color. Save that. Now let's tweak it a bit because it looks a bit wild like that, so we can make them more of like this light blue. I think that goes obviously better together with the dark purple, and maybe change the purple again a little bit to yeah, but again, you can play around with these values. You can set them to whatever you want and set up however you want. So now you see we've got this nice kind of star set up, and you can see at the horizon it's kind of this darker color, so we can move it down a little bit. So obviously we come back over to the blend, and we can just set the blend maybe to 15 or 5, so it's a bit wider, and then we can just the blend offset, we can adjust sort of how high or how low it is. So you see if we just adjust the blend offset, we're moving it up or just down a bit. So we'll just move it down a bit so it's kind of under the horizon for now, and then we'll go back to maybe making it a bit thicker, down. So it's under the horizon, it's there. It's not too bad, but it's mostly okay. So put a comment around these, select all the nodes, press C, and we'll call this one small stars, and this one here large stars, and we'll save that. So again, this will all be for free. This asset will be for free, and these materials will be for free on VFX Vault. If you want them for your games, for UEFN, we can change the small star texture scale if you want like more or less. So 5, you see, you can make it a bit bigger, put these small kind of stars in bigger, or we can go like say 25 or like 50, make them really, really small with that. Lots of tiny little dots, and then maybe bring the color down a little bit. But at the moment it's really just kind of static, right? It's just kind of this flat image. So what can we do to give it a bit more visual interest? So what we can do is we can use curves. So I'll go over how we can use curves to add some more interesting color next. So some small things that we can do to help give it some more visual interest is add a little bit of noise to it. So we have this soft noise texture that I've added, but you can use your own noise textures, and we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to copy this out, and we're going to plug in our noise texture. So we select it here, and we just make sure it's plugged into both of these. So you see we've got our noise texture, and we probably don't want to scale it so much, and we'll also change these. We'll call this noise texture scale. This one here, noise texture scale, and let's scale it down to say 5. And we don't need to multiply it here. What we want to do is we can multiply it against the large stars and the small stars. So what it's going to do is it's going to sort of hide certain parts and show certain parts. So if we just multiply it like that and save, so it's probably really, really bright at the moment. Let's change the scale down to say 1, and we'll save again, and then we'll put in a power, because I think that's the problem. Put in a power node here, and we'll hold S and click, and this one will be called noise power. And again we save, and as we turn the noise power up, it should remove parts, but It's not quite working, so let's take a look. So let's scale it a bit more, say 5. And put a multiply after the power, so we can multiply up the parts that aren't getting pulled down by the power node. And let's just go 10, and we'll call this one noise mult. Noise mult. Cool, now you can see that some parts are kind of brighter and some parts are a bit darker. And what we can do to actually give it a bit more visual interest is we can add a panner. So put the panner in, and we'll just give it a really slow speed. So what we can do actually is hold S and click, and we'll call this one panner speed X and panner speed Y, and we'll put a panner here as well. And obviously you can put these panners on the stars. Obviously you want the stars to be moving too, but we're just going to move the noise for now, and we go append because we want to put them together, append vector. So, and then we just plug it into the speed on both the noise textures here, and we'll set the X to 0.2, which might be a bit fast, but we'll set the Y to 0.2. I think will look better. And then okay, so with the Y at 0.2, you can see now that the noise is kind of moving over the stars, kind of brightening certain parts and darkening other parts, which is nice. We can also, let's just do it now instead, actually. So instead of putting it here, we can take it, actually no, we'll leave it here. We can put some panners on these other ones. So we'll go like this, put a panner here, and just make a bit of space, move this across, put a panner here, and another panner here, and another panner here, and another panner here, and we'll just set them in the Y for now to sort of 0.05, really slowly moving. So the stars will move, but just at a really slow pace. And you might need to change these values, obviously, depending on what you're building and what textures you're using. But if you look at it really slowly now, you can see the stars are also moving. We can maybe go 0.01, so I'll move them twice as fast, so 0.01. And save that. Cool. So now you can see they're moving really nicely. So the last thing we want to do is put kind of a nice kind of glow gradient texture, curve texture in the background, so the sky isn't just sort of black behind our stars. So we'll save that. So the last thing we're going to do is we're just going to copy out this noise texture again, and we'll call this one our color noise texture scale, and same with this one here, a color noise texture scale. And then we'll delete this panner here because we're going to want to move it at a separate speed, and we'll call this one color noise. And then we want to use a curve. So curves are super helpful for getting really nice colors and color ranges instead of just multiplying it by a flat color, which only gives us kind of a flat result. We can use a curve. So we go curve here, curve, and we'll call this color curve, and we'll call this CA Galaxy curve. And then we'll also put in a curve. We need to make a curve atlas. We'll call this CA Atlas. So I'll open up the CA Atlas, and we want to make sure we come down to the texture width, and we'll just set it to say 256 for now. And we click the little, where it says gradient curves, we click the little plus, and we plug in our color curve, the CA galaxy curve. Now we open the galaxy curve, and now you see what we can do is we can pick a color. So we have purple at the start, let's have kind of green in the middle, and blue at the end. So now we have a curve that goes from blue to green to purple. And if we save that, and also save that, we come back into our material. Once it's finished saving, we can go curve atlas. So we have this thing called curve atlas row parameter. We plug in the lerp from the color noise that we made, and we select the atlas, which is CA atlas and CA galaxy curve. And now we can multiply this by how strong do we want the color. So we go color intensity, and then finally we'll drag all this down. We can add it to our base color as well as our emissive, and it says cannot cast from float 4 to float 2, so there's a float 4. So what we need to do here is the issue with this section here, so we need to plug from the red channel into our lerps instead of the RGB, and now it's taking that single red channel and running it through this curve to map the color in our curve onto the colors in our textures. So if you see here, and it's because we're multiplying by 1, see it's giving us these kind of funky colors from our curve mapped onto our texture, and it looks pretty wild at the moment. So what we can do is we can come back into our color curve, and if we just select all of these and we just go say 0.1, and then in the middle down to 0.1, this last one here we'll bring it way down to 0.1, and probably even less than that. We can multiply here inside of our, and get 0.1, and let's add some better colors, because I think purple maybe might not be. So here you go, we've got this purple and this blue, and then last one, let's add maybe more of a red, and then we can bring it down even more, 0.01, 0.05, 0. So just keep in mind that it might not always update, so there's a bit of a bug with curve atlases and such, and it might not update until you save the curve atlas and then you save the material again. It might not always update nicely. So now you can see though, we've got this kind of nice purplish, dark purple, pink noise moving across our galaxy skybox with our stars kind of flickering and all the noise kind of moving across it. So I'll just open up the second viewport so we can see it a bit better. And yeah, you can see we've got this nice kind of purple pink skybox effect. So I hope this was helpful. I'll go over the material one more time, but again, the final material and all the texture assets, they'll be available for free on VFX Vault if you want to download. I'll also have some high quality skyboxes you can use in your UEFN projects for sale as well if you want to support the channel. So please head along and check those out. But again, we just have a curve atlas, a couple textures, and a little bit of math. So we've got the UVs here with the blends, and then we've got the large stars, we've got the small stars and the small star color, then we've got the noise for kind of making the stars flicker, so star flicker noise that we're multiplying against our big and our small stars, and then we've got our color noise curve here. So I hope that was helpful. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask down below in the comments or reach out on the Discord channel. I'll leave a link to the Discord channel below as well. So thank you so much for watching. This has been Jordan from VFX Vault, and I'll see you guys in the next one.